Hey, Delphina here to let you know about a little Kickstarter I'm finishing up right now called Dragons Being Weird Little Guys. We're funding a sticker set, there's pins and coloring books, and it's a great chance to pick up Somnolus in print at a great price. It all ends October 4th, so be sure to claim your favorite Weird Little Guys by going to somnolus.com/stickers or finding my posts on Twitter and Tumblr at Delphina2K. Thank you so much for your support.
Just do it! Don't let your dreams be dreams. Yesterday said tomorrow. So just do it! Make your dreams come true!
Hello and welcome to Screen Tones, where we talk everything and anything webcomics. Today we're going to have a bit of a follow-up on our episode's numbers and talk about the impact that they have on our fellow creators' mindsets when creating. We touched a bit about the subject in that episode, but today we're going to tackle the subject in a broader sense, how to handle, learn when to walk away, and to ultimately understand your work as a creator. I'm Crispy, my pronouns are she, they, and I make the comic Ghost Junk Sickness.
And I'm Rennie. I use she, they pronouns, and I make the webcomic Kate Blast. So we know what numbers can do for us, but each of us has different goals when it comes to creating. So how do we know when we're experiencing things like FOMO or things like that? And how do we keep ourselves focused on our own needs rather than what our peers do when they're around us?
So one of the things that I always think about when it comes to numbers and stats and analytics and all that and the bag chips is that I always have to recenter myself and think of the goal that I started out with when creating comics. And that was my main absolute goal when I was doing Ghost Junk Sickness, was the fact that I'm just like, okay, I want this story to be complete so that I can print it and put it on my bookshelves. That's my ultimate goal. I want to see it, in book form. I just want to hold it. I want it in physical form. The things that come after, I have to remind myself, I was just like, that's extra, that's gravy, that's things that are a positive, if they are such a thing, but not something that I have to constantly work for at all times. And I think that this is where FOMO comes to play in that kind of experience, where you hear someone being like, oh yeah, like, say I did reach my goal. Well, I did. I have too many versions of Ghost Junk printed now because I'm obsessed. But but I have the book printed, and somebody else who was just like, I've never would have thought to print my book. That wasn't a priority, or that wasn't even anything in my mind, looks at that and they're just like, well, wait, is that part of webcomics? Should I be printing my book? Should I be doing that? And it's just like, it's good that it's making you consider these things, but at the same sense, no one's pressuring you to do that thing. And you'll see it a lot on social media. You'll see it so much when people talk about scheduling and stuff like that, and feeling like they need to keep up with the turnout of these pages and the constant creating, so that they can gain the readers as this other person does, so that they can gain the following that this other person does, without considering the fact that it's just like, regardless of what you do in that sense, your work is going to grow extremely different on all kind of senses, because of the fact that it is different. It's not going to grow the same as Villainous's who really like apples, the comic. I don't even know.
Well, like, it's funny you say that too, because that ties into it, where it's like you can sort of really also get lost in the sauce of from what your original vision was. It's really, really important to go in with an understanding of, like, have a bullet list of 3 things of, this is what I want out of comics, period. 3 things. That's it. Same with your story. This is what I want the story to be about and include 3 to 5 things. Boom, boom, boom. List them out and put them on a bulletin board or a wall or something, so that when you start looking around on the internet and you go, oh, geez, there's a big trend on Tapas that's everyone's making a comic with a villainess. I
Mhm.
gotta have a villainess in my comic, and then all of a sudden you have a villainess, and then you lose sight of what fits with your comic,
Mhm.
because you might get away with it on one or two things, but eventually the story is going to start feeling really different than what you set out to make, and you got to ask yourself, okay, am I doing this because I want this in the story,
Yeah.
or am I doing this because I want 10,000 likes on Tapas?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of like you'll see discussions when you're in like communities on Discord and stuff like that. Uh you will come across the faded discussion of webtoon subs, tap as subs and stuff like that, and the constant equating that to self-worth. And it's just like that's a dangerous, dangerous game to play because it's not. It's not equating your worth with those subs or the likes or something like that. It's a hard metric, and it's unfair to you to also say that, you know, because Villainous with the Apples has 39K subscribers and my story about Kittens in Space only has like, I don't know, 5,000 subscribers, that means that Kittens in Space is bad. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all, because like you said, Rennie, trends are a big, big thing, and things go and they come and go. They come and go a lot. And so what is good to think about is the fact that webcomics are very, very long form. So the journey to make them really, really changes because they're transformative in that sense. And they take a very, very long time to create too. So say you're going to start off during the trends of villainesses. We're here
That's
now.
the easy one, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to start and say, hey, I'm going to start my webcomic on villainesses in the year 2022. It's going to be great, you know, whatever. And it's going to take me 5 to 10 years to complete because, I mean, surprise, that's webcomics. And by that time, you know, it's over. The trend for villainesses is probably gone. And you'll see that with a lot of things. I mean, you know, I mean, vampires keep coming and going. They're eternal. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I mean, vampires are eternal, didn't you know? But like, you definitely see resurgences of certain things. Like, I know, like there was the big push of isekais
Mm-hmm.
in both comics and in animation, and that's a bubble that is probably already burst, but it's just a slow burst because everyone jokes about, oh god, there's too many isekais.
Yeah.
It's and so studios are going to start steering away from those titles, and then all of a sudden, like, a studio can sort of change on a dime with a
Mm-hmm.
trend because they
Mm-hmm.
have 100 to 200 employees.
Yeah.
Some larger comics productions that have 5 to 10 employees can do that. Most, I would say 95 to 99% of webcomics creators are a solo team, as we talked about in Hats.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you're gonna have to, like, commit to something. Are you willing to commit 10 years of your life to a trend?
Yeah.
Unless like, I would say that's probably not worth it unless Villainous is your favorite thing on the planet and you would die for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an excellent point, and it's just like that helps, you know, the long running format of it. And I think that also in that sense, if you were to focus and be like, what's my goals for when I originally started this comic, and you know, what's the point of what I'm doing? Having that constant recenter to me helps combat rewrite hell too, because what I'm seeing a lot of when people go into rewrites and trying to get stuff that is in the trends now and being relevant is that, you know, they're transforming their work into something, like you said, Rennie, that is so far from the original intent. And it can be draining, it can be exhausting, it can be like, ugh, well, I'm so far into this comic and I might as well finish it, but I hate it because it's grown away from me. It's turned into something else, and something that you begin to resent. And you know, with statistics and stuff like that, and the numbers and the following count and blah 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 blah, you know, that just it doesn't help. It adds to
No.
a lot of this mindset that kind of flops a lot too, goes back and forth. Because, say, and I've seen this in the community, I've seen where someone has made something that's very, very successful, but it's successful in a way where they were following a trend. And now they resent it. They resent the project because they're like, that's great, everybody likes it. That's great that I have 1 million subscribers, but I hate it. It's not me.
How many
And
times have you seen the meme online where it's the artist holding up the Mona Lisa and it's crickets, and then the second panel is holds up this dumb meme that I made in 5 minutes, and it's swarmed with people, and you see
yeah.
the artist like, "Ugh!" Like that meme, like it's capturing a real emotion
Hmm.
that creators have, and
Hmm.
like if it's like I like memes just as much as the next person, but like I'm not gonna I don't want my career to be defined
Yeah.
off of memes. So I can definitely see why that would start building resentment. Like
Hmm.
if like your big thing is vampires, and you go off and make a fluffy furry comic that takes off, like of course you're gonna be like, well, I wish I was spending this time making vampires. It's
Yeah.
like you should be making the thing for you first.
Yes. Yeah. And not forcing yourself into an idea that doesn't correlate with your goal, with your mindset, with what you wanted to do that. Because, like we have both said, web comics take a lot of effort to make. Your solo team usually most of the time, and it's just like that's it. You're the production zone, like you're in charge of all these hats. So you got to be committed. And where it can feel really nice when, you do hit that sweet spot, you get a nice trend, or you do a nice meme and you're like, cool. um but it really hurts when it starts to go away from the work that actually is represented. Now, this is not to discourage anyone from using memes to kind of describe their work and stuff like that. Go for it, because it's all about trends, right? So if you do see a meme that relates to your comic and you're like, oh, I'm gonna kind of ride on the boat, it's hopping right now and it'll get me some clicks, go for it. But it's on the other side of the spectrum when you're just constantly chasing that, where you're paying more attention to getting those clicks and getting that instant validation from the like
Yeah,
buttons, that you're just like, oh my god, yes, yes, they like the meme. And then it's getting further and further away from your work. And not even memes in that sense of like, it could be just exploring different aspects that isn't present in the larger body of work that is your web comic. And again, that's the running away, that's the FOMO. And keeping yourself focused on your kind of goal there with what you originally wanted can help with those blinders that you kind of do need. You know, one thing that I always think about is the fact that we as people are very, very subjected to so much information, so much media, so much that's going on in the world. And, it's really, really good to just step back, not even be involved in some of the social aspects of the media and stuff like that, put it down and be like, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to how well my comic's doing, how well my art is doing, or whatever. Or I'm not even going to look at what the person next to me is
heck,
doing.
you've said that you don't even have a stat tracker
Yep.
active.
Exactly. Exactly. I know that I have to do that specifically for myself, because I know that I'll get distracted and I'll
Hmm.
start equating myself to these numbers that I see. And whereas in the numbers episode, we've talked a good amount about what numbers can do for you. And, they're really helpful. They have these tools to help you if you want to go into these certain directions. But that's the main thing right there, is if, and if on a lot of things, because what one works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for the other person either, and it all depends on the work that's in, like, being created.
1,000%. And I think like going back to like something you said earlier too, is like a lot of the numbers can really change and aren't really what you would think they are. Because like Take for example Webtoon. The way that we as creators, at least growing up, I'm gonna age myself here. Growing up in the era of DeviantArt or whatever, we like even going from DeviantArt to MySpace to Twitter to Facebook, all of those use likes and subs fairly similarly. Where like DeviantArt would show like this is how many people have viewed your art. The view is an empirical number. Same with like the little view counters that used to be on the bottom of sites with the little animated GIFs. Like those are empirical numbers that are telling a specific thing that is like not, you can't mess with that number. Then you get to subs and you get to things like Twitter where it's like that number fluctuates, but it's generally pretty honest.
Yeah.
But then you get to like something like Webtoon, and I think a bunch of other platforms use this too, where you'll start seeing likes and subscriptions and things like that not meeting where we're expecting them to be. Because we expect a like means a person saw this piece of work, like on DA, and liked it or added it to their favorites.
Yeah.
We're used to that meaning a direct translation from this person added this work to their favorites to they liked this work. Whether they liked it or loved it or cherished it for the rest of their lives, you can't tell unless they comment, which comments are also pretty empirical, but as we just discussed. But Webtoon has this funny thing, Webtoon and a bunch of other sites like that, where you'll start seeing where like people will post like, hey, I have a page update, episode update, and then the sub counts will go down. Or like the like counts will go down. And it's like so much on, I think a lot of the more corporate sites in general is tied to, did you get featured or not? Which isn't necessarily indicative of the quality of your work. It just means the right person saw it at the right time and clicked yes.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of creators can sort of get in their heads with that of looking at, most creators are still looking at a like and a subscription as meaning exactly what they say they are.
Yeah.
That this person subscribed to my work so that they could read it. But the way that certain model algorithms and certain site models are changing is that readers are now treating subscriptions as I'm going to bookmark this for later.
Yeah.
And everyone knows that if you throw something bookmarked in your web browser, you're not going to go back to look at it. It's like I'm throwing this on Pinterest, which is the glorified garbage heap. And then you remember, oh yeah, it's 4 years later. Oh yeah, I kind of have an inkling for this. And then you might go back and look at it. It's this might be useful later, not right now.
Yeah.
Which has its purpose, but if you go into managing your stats and looking at them and trying to draw any kind of information out of looking at your numbers, you're going to look at and say, oh wow, I put this update up and my subs went down because I put an update. How bad was this update?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not true at all.
Yeah. And kind of feeds into like the next thing that I kind of want to go into, which is an honest metric. You did mention it previously, Rennie. And I think when we talk about stuff like this, like when you're talking and describing webtoons and stuff like that, and we kind of equate with, or we not equate, we kind of fill into what is an honest metric. So what is something that can be like measured in a way that means something to us? Now, like you just described with webtoons and DeviantArt being very, very different with what a favorite is versus what a subscribe is, even with Twitter, what a like is versus what a favorite is, it's so subjective to the site and the platforms that you're on, as well as the intent for the creator as well. So when I get a like or a favorite, I know that they're different, but also similar in the same sense. So, to sit there and say that I'm worse because of this metric that is so, almost random with what it means is so harsh on a creator. It's so harsh on yourself to do that. And, Same with something like a platform like Webtoons has, where we have these subscriptions that go down and stuff like that. It's just based on what the readers are doing at the time. I know that they have a certain amount of comics that they can subscribe to, aka basically like a bookmark, which they have a bookmark count, which is a thing.
I don't understand
Yeah.
that.
And that could be the very thing. That could be like, oh, okay, they had to remove your comic from their bookmark count because they needed to make room because they're going to read something else. And like, it doesn't mean that your work is bad. It doesn't mean that you're not performing well or yada yada yada, or that you have to keep overperforming to get their attention, because that's it right there. That's the trap I see so many people fall into, being like, the moment they see negative, quote unquote, numbers or statistics, it's like, that's it. That's an instant reflection on my work. That means it's bad. And it's like, no, this is not an honest metric. You can't describe your work based on this one interaction with a button. And the same thing goes for comments that you get that may be negative. So say you are doing your comic, boop, 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 and you get a nice, nice little comment that's like, wow, this comic was hard to read because it's badly paced. Does that mean that your comic is badly paced? Nope. That just means that this person didn't like the pacing, and that's them problem.
Yep.
So that's the part of taking yourself away from these numbers and being like, what's honest about this? Well, that's honest for them that they didn't enjoy it because of the pacing, but that's not an exact reflection on my work.
Yeah, comments can be pretty deceptive sometimes. In sort of both directions too, because like it's pretty easy to start tuning out some of the more negative stuff. Like for some people, I know for me, I kind of just block and move on
Mm-hmm.
if it's particularly bad, and I try not to think about it too much. But for other people, it just eats at them. Like, oh, this one person really, really didn't like my pacing, and then they'll go back and change the entire thing
Yeah.
because Wolfdog on Twitter said that they didn't like it, and it's like no.
Yeah.
Like if you start getting a lot of comments on something, that's a sign that you should maybe go talk to a peer
Yes.
or go talk to an editor if you have access to one. Like get someone to be like, okay, I'm getting these comments. Are they correct?
Yeah.
And get a professional opinion on it. Because part of the problem is that sometimes readers really enjoy reading comics, but don't necessarily have the same language to use for like describing art
Mm-hmm.
and storytelling in a way that like a writer or a creator would approach something. So they might use the word pacing in a different way than you would use it. So that the comment itself might not even match up. Or like I think on the flip side of that, you could also really kind of get dragged in a wrong direction by comments that are like, oh, this one character, they're the best, I simp them, they're the most awesomest person ever, and I want this comic to be about them 100%. And you could really start losing your vision if you listen to those comments at two,
Mm-hmm.
because like then you're losing track of your vision and you're chasing what other people want from your work, whether
Mm-hmm.
versus what you want from your work. And it's all comes down to the I'm doing this so that I can make my readers happy so I can have more readers.
Yep.
And it's like you'll make them happy for a fleeting moment.
Yeah.
And then the moment you do something that they don't like, they will drop you.
Yeah. And it's just the nature. It's just the nature.
Like, didn't you have do you want to talk about Aiden?
So I have examples from that a lot in my webcomic journey. So Ghost Junk is going to be turning 8 years old this year, which is absolutely incredible. We've reached the threshold of over 1,000 pages updated, and it's really, really cool. It feels awesome. But of course, when you have such a long running haul of a comic, I've seen things. And
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships now.
and one of these things is exactly what Rennie was describing, in which I had readers who were really, really into this rather murderous character and were just like, oh my god, I love this character so much. And, you know, me as a writer, I do enjoy writing this character. They're an absolute train wreck, but, you know, anyway, we did have comments being like, oh my gosh, I would prefer this character stay over one of the main characters, and you know, this character's the best and stuff like that. And then shortly after, the character was axed and because of plot reasons. And we lost readers for that, and I wasn't broken. I wasn't oh my god. I think at the moment I was just like, oh my god, I'm so shook by the reaction of people dropping it because they wanted this murder guy, you know, as the front facing character. But you know, looking back at that now, I look back at it on a lot of reasons, and one of the biggest ones is the fact that we took a risk, and I love that we took a risk. I was so nervous when we were updating it. I was so nervous when we axed the character. But you know what? Looking back at that now, I'm like, I talk about this chapter all the time. I am just like, this is my risk chapter, and I'm so proud that we did it. So you know what? Yes, we lost some followers. Yes, some people were like, "What? No." But in the end, I think that the work came from it stronger, and I'm so much happier because that was the vision. That was the original intent. Like, I didn't change it because people wanted Murder Guy to be a main character.
And now 10 chapters later, you can look back at it and go, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's a really good point to pay attention to continuous feedback when they do say like, oh my gosh, like, I'm not understanding this point, I'm not understanding what's going on, I can't distinguish these characters, yada yada yada. And then being like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm gonna approach my peer group and be like, hey, can you confirm some things for me? People are getting real hung up about this, and then do some reflecting afterwards and whatever you do with that.
Yep.
As opposed to people being like, oh my gosh, I simp Murder Man so much, I want him in every episode, and you're like,
Murder Man fan club.
yeah. And you're like, I'm sorry, I cannot do that. That's just not where the comic's going.
Oh, but yeah, so like that just goes to show that like comments can sometimes like they may be honest as far as like what they're saying might be right, but they don't necessarily have to be a reflection on your work.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like to circle back to like, I don't know if there is such a thing as an honest metric.
Yep. It's true because what one person dedicates their time to being an honest metric to their work is completely different from what it like translates to what I consider you know, valuable and whatnot. And like, that's the thing. Like, I don't personally, as a person, think that like a large following count means that I'm the most successful person out there and stuff like that. That doesn't mean like that's the end goal and that's going to describe me and I've made it. But it can be for other people, and that's okay. But it's just not my goal, and our goals don't have to align, and they shouldn't align. And that's the thing. That's where you're going to curb that FOMO and whatnot, is when you're just like, okay, what did I want out of this? What am I doing?
Yeah. And I think one thing to keep in mind when you're like, if you get in the headspace of like looking at like, wow, this person has like 20,000 followers on Twitter and I have like 3. Oh no, what a shame. I must be so terrible. And it's like, no, just wait until the Twitter disappears, because it will someday.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone will have to start at 0 again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it won't translate because it doesn't. So it's like that number is a made up number for Twitter, not for your webcomic and not for your art. It is a number for that site.
Yes.
Nothing else.
Yeah. Because you won't have the same followers on every platform too. So it's just like, it does not behold you to these things, these standards that you're setting yourself to have these numbers. They're good for obviously a bunch of things that we said in the numbers game episode. There's obviously 100% uses for them, and I definitely encourage people to listen to that episode to really have a deep dive into it. But at the same sense, that's not what makes you as a creator. This
No.
isn't the last thing. And I remember I've had some conversations with creators who wanted to quit. They wanted to quit because the numbers weren't as high as their other friends. And that is very sad, actually.
Yeah.
Very, very sad.
It's always sad when you see someone give up on a project, period. And like, this isn't to say, like, I think that if you don't want to work on a project anymore, you shouldn't be forced. No one's holding a gun at your head telling you to finish it. And like, so like, I think there's two sides of this too, of like, you see creators like trying to finish a work because they think their 10,000 followers on Twitter are going to be mad if they don't finish it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see people with like 800 followers on Twitter give up on a work because they don't have 10,000 followers.
Yeah.
And it's like, those two things are two sides of the same exact coin of like, you are being probably a little too rabbit eared to whatever that particular audience wants out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things to get like, I don't think you get big on any platform, period, without luck.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot discount how big of a percentage of getting big air quotes I use there, how much a percentage of that is luck. Because I would venture a guess it's easily 20 to 30%. It's pretty high up there. And it just takes one person hitting a retweet button. You can't control that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like the other thing that I did want to kind of point out too is the fact that each of these places that you can see the metrics of these numbers, aside from like even Google Analytics on your own site, is that each place has its own form of audience. So the audience on Webtoons generally is a younger audience than the people on Twitter who are using it, you know, as it is intended with a social site. And the age ranges a little bit like bigger of a net, casts much wider net there, but it's still a certain type of person that uses Twitter. It's a certain type of person that uses Tumblr, and so on and so forth. So again, it's a hard place to kind of measure one's worth when you're just like, okay, Twitter is the whole internet experience for me, where it's not. You know, we're going to talk about in conventions episodes about the fact that meeting people in real life and not on the internet is a very different experience too, with how they consume your work and how they relate to it and so on and so forth. And that's the thing, is that these metrics are always going to be different, and the experiences are always going to be different because of who and where and why they come from too. And you know, to take these numbers with an absolute grain of salt and recontextualize them with what they mean to you.
100%. Because like, you can look at like your stats and go, oh yeah, no, I got 50 views on this update this week on my Google Analytics. Oh, that's pretty low. But then imagine, I think Ray said this once in a chat, and then maybe in a different episode too, where it's like, think about those people in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine like a classroom in a college or in your high school, and it's got 50 people in that room, all there because you made a comic.
Yeah.
That is one cramped room.
Yeah, that is. That absolutely is. And, you know, another thing that you have to consider is that you're not going to have your eyes and ears open to every little interaction with how people like enjoy your work too. There are people who are readers that aren't online. There are people who are readers that don't use all of these kind of places that you could actually measure where they come from. And they're just enjoying their works and telling their friends, and you're not privy to that. And that's just one thing that you might find out maybe one day. Say you do a con and they they appear and you're like, wow, hello, friend. But that's not always the case either. They can be this absolute nebulous little person that, you know, just really, really enjoys your comic and stuff like that. And you don't know. And that's another thing that's really, really okay to do. Because
You
I
think
think,
about sorry.
oh no, you go for it.
Because like think about like you think about the days of yore in comics with, you know, syndication and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
How many times do you think someone read a Calvin and Hobbes strip and went, I'm gonna send Bill Watterson a letter to tell him thank you for making Calvin and Hobbes?
Yeah.
Probably a very low percentage, and out of that number probably had a hard time finding his address. But like you didn't get that kind of interaction back then. Like the only way you got that was like you had like a Garfield merch where it's like, okay, I can tell people like Garfield because they're buying all the Garfield plushies and mugs and slippers or whatever. And like I like you can't do that. Like you can't, it's not like that sort of like interaction as with your fans. Like you can't expect that every single fan is going to like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that's just the key point right here is that not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody's going to engage that quote unquote physically so that you can see exactly how they're engaging with your work. And this is why it's so different. And it's so different depending on the type of work. It's so different with genre. It's so different with trends. Like my comic is very different from Rennie's comic, where Rennie has a very bombastic and fun and explodey, and it's great and colorful, and mine is just some drama, and then we have some
And
grit and
wires.
yeah, wires and some action and stuff like that, and it's a little, you know,
A little bloody, a little
yeah,
a little
yeah,
roughed up around the
little,
edges.
little roughed up. And so the people who interact with my comic aren't going to be the same kind of interactions. And you see this all across the board. People who have like really, really fun one-liners or really, really animated characters are going to bring different types of people. So again, it's just like equating your comic to somebody else's where there's such a difference. Well, don't do it.
Yeah,
Don't do
and
that.
like especially cross genres too, because like I think this is most pronounced in the difference between like action comics and like things like slice of life,
Mm-hmm.
where you get like slice of life crowd is a very specific crowd. It's a big crowd though, so like there's a ton of room to play around in that space. But like the amount of times you see people crossing over between like slice of life and like bloody gory horror or whatever, like there's a Venn diagram there, but like they are different audiences, and
Yeah.
it's like, and that's okay, that's a good thing. Like not everything's going to be for everybody. Like I have comics that I've read that I'm like, this isn't made for me, but doesn't mean it's a bad comic,
Yeah.
just it's like not for me, it's not my tastes, because everyone's allowed to have tastes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm allowed to like pineapple on my pizza.
Are you?
I am. Screen time's over.
This is the last episode.
Pineapple on pizza killed it.
Oh, but I think that comes down to kind of our last point right here about statistics and numbers and the whole 9 yards is that at the end of the day, who are you creating for? Are you creating for Wolf Dog 420 on Twitter? Because you know they have a large follower count and you're like, wow, if I gun for Wolf Dog's gonna expose my comic, and you start to lose a vision? Or are you creating for you who just wanted to do this story about space cats, and you know you wanted to keep your head down and just, you know, be as authentic as possible?
100%. Like you gotta. That's where like it ties back to one of the things I said earlier of have that post-it note
Yes.
with your goals and your ideals and like the three things that make your comic yours. have that written down and like look at that and remind that yourself of that regularly.
Yeah.
Because like at the end of the day, if I'm reading a comic, I can tell if the person is having fun making it. And if
Yes.
it's just 100% them coming out of it. I love that kind of work. And like that's why I tend to read a lot in many different genres, because that's for me my favorite part of webcomics is I want to see self-indulgence. I want to see this is a thing I want to make and I want the world to see it. Um versus the I want to get big on Tapley Tunes and I guess it's villains time.
Yeah.
So here's villains
Yeah.
talking, and then you go like, but like you don't feel the emotion, you don't feel the energy, and like, and then it feels like they're going like you're going through the motions,
Yeah.
and that's not good for you as a creator to be going through the motions, especially with something that will take you 5 to 10 years to make. That's a long time. That's a tenth of your life, probably, if you're lucky. So like if you're gonna spend that much time making something, make it yours. Make it something that you want to tell.
Exactly. Exactly. And just at the end of the day, it's just like something that you have to realize is that you're not looking for a single day's worth of numbers or the months, at the end of the month, let's see how well we're doing. You're looking for this community, this behavior that you've cultivated with your comic and stuff like that. These people that might pop up at conventions, these people that might just randomly give you these absolute massive comments on your site, and they're just like, I've been just so shy and here I'm going to drop it now, and it's so random, you can't tell where that's going to come from. I actually keep a book for myself where I go on my site and I read all the comments and stuff like that. And when I get a comment that really, really touches, like, me personally, I'm just like, okay, I'm writing this down because on my low days where I feel like I am not good enough, I'm gonna open that book up and I'm gonna be like, wow, nope, this is uplifting. Seeing these people say these things, I'm just like, okay, that's it. That helps me keep going too. So it can definitely cushion some of that self-doubt that, I mean, is natural. Self-doubt is
Everyone's got it.
100% it. Yeah, they do. And comparing yourself is natural. Wanting to do as good as the other person is 100% natural. But I think at the end of the day, you just got to focus on what the point of this webcomic is and who and what are you creating for. Because if you're focused and you can kind of help use that to step away from things that you feel are harming you or distorting your vision, I think that will save you definitely in the long run when creating webcomics.
Yeah, especially with webcomics being so online.
Mm-hmm.
Like most social platforms are designed to spark conversation. Derogative.
Yeah.
It is designed for you to look at the other person and compare yourself. Like Twitter and Instagram were designed for celebrity gossip.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they were made for, and we happen to be using it as an art site and a job board and whatever the heck else we're using it for. But at the end of the day, it's designed to make you look at other people and go, God, I wish that were me.
Yeah.
So like the best thing you can do on like those low days or those low weeks is just get off the internet.
Yeah.
Just go. Just like it seems so like such a joke at this point, but like go for a walk. Go like be like, I'm gonna go to the beach and just sit there and read a physical book.
Mm-hmm.
Or like I'm gonna go into the woods and meditate or whatever you do.
Yeah.
Like on those low days, those are the days. Like one of my hobbies is I ride a motorcycle, and those are the days where I'm like, I'm just gonna go on like a 5 hour ride.
Yep.
Where if I'm looking at Twitter while I'm riding a motorcycle, I'm gonna crash.
Yeah.
So I physically can't.
Yeah.
So it's like those are the days where you find the ways to be like, you know what? I'm not gonna look at this. I'm not gonna look at the latest discourse. I do not care. I don't care what the numbers are. I don't care what this person said, like, or who we're dogpiling this time. Just go
Yeah.
offline. Like I've taken to, like, the last couple of months. Most weekends I don't check Twitter. I don't check Discord that
Yep.
much. Like, and my outlook on comics has never been better.
Yeah.
Honestly, just by having that time of, I'm not going to look at it.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of the stuff is very, very much paired with the hustle culture, feeling
It
like you're
is.
like, you have to be doing all of these platforms all of the time for success. And it's
Yay,
just like,
capitalism.
yeah. Yeah. So that could be very like drowning. That's scary if you're caught yourself in a loop thinking that you have to do all this stuff. And it's like, I'm an artist and this is the only thing I can do because this is the only place where I can make money and blah 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 blah. And I see lots of people fall into that trap and it's scary. It is so scary. I think the number one thing is that you have to find what works for you first. You don't
Yeah.
want to be stuck in this loop and this content, this stuff that's you're making and the time that you're putting into it just because you're just like, oh well, this is the only way for me to get followers is if I make memes about sad beans and I hate these sad beans, but I'm going to keep making them because people keep following me. And I wish they would read my Space Cat epic story instead. And that's it. That's what we want to avoid here.
Yeah.
When you're equating yourself to all of these numbers that you feel you have to do. And I mean, there's not 100% solution to this. But what I do want to reiterate is definitely what Rennie said, and putting up boundaries for yourself. And that means that when it gets too real and you find yourself kind of floating away from what you wanted, figure out, where was the place that I started to switch and stuff like that? And how can I try to remedy that? How can I walk away from something like looking at numbers and stuff like that so that I can refocus and get back on track to where I wanted to be. And that can be exactly what Rennie said, going on her motorcycle, just taking a ride. I mean, even being in places that you really, really like, or just doing things that you really like to do. Like, I personally like to do random super cleaning. I like
Cleaning is
to
cleaning is meditative,
it
though.
is. I like to reorganize, redo rooms, and just be like, okay, I guess it's time that I'm going to go after this closet randomly and just take everything out. Maybe I accidentally see some of my old art and I'm like, oh, dip. I was really into this stuff. This is cool, and have that connection too. So, just things that kind of refresh your perspective and kind of put those the little train caboose back on the tracks.
Yeah. And I cannot emphasize this enough, to try and have the thing not be on a computer or a phone screen, because it'll tempt you. The internet is a cruel, cruel temptress, and will get you back in. So, like, find ways to, like, turn the monitors off, put the phone down, and do something else. And if you're, like, as you said, with, like, a hustle culture is huge, 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 huge right now, where it's like, if you're worried about, like, oh well, I have to keep doing this because I have to hit this update, or every update or two, take a break, take a hiatus, take a week, take 1 week, 1 day update off. Like, the week that we're recording this, I had some life stuff and I took some more offline time, and I was like, you know what? No page this week. We'll see you guys next week.
Yep.
Boom. Easy. It's this is the best part about webcomics is, unless you have a signed contract, like, you can do whatever you want.
Yep. And
So, like, don't be afraid to take that break.
yeah. And even so, it's just like your publishers or your editors should be like conscious of the mental energy that you have, and just reach out, just send them a little email being like, hey, Joe Schmo, like, I got to do it. I got to take some time off. I got to walk away because, creating is a very huge mental stress and burden at sometimes, because we all do it differently. And,
Yeah.
it depends on the capacity that we can have our outputs and not yada, yada, yada. So it's just like taking that in consideration. Breaks are part of the process. walking away is a part of the process. You have to make time for it. And, I often used to think when I started doing Ghost Junk was that I was just like, okay, we have to be this, we have to be that. And as much as you're consistent and as much as you're like constantly on the internet, this is how you become successful. And it's not the case. I'm sorry, I'm breaking the bubble. It's not the case at all. It's not going to be like I miss being active on Twitter and therefore my numbers are going to drop. They are, but I mean, that doesn't mean that there goes your career either. So
if I ever say I miss Twitter, take me out bad. Please.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yep. Honestly, me too.
Right?
I think with that, I think that's a chicken salad Caesar wrap.
I think it is.
Oh my gosh.
A very tasty wrap.
It is. We should get some Chipotle sauce. Oh wait, no, it's Caesar. But anyway.
Thousand Islands.
It is the region. I have been. I'm Crispy, and you can find my work at www.ghostjunksickness.com.
And I've been Running, and you can find my work at kateblast.com.
We should go for poutine. I think that's the best.
I definitely want it.
I should be like, it's been a poutine.
Thank you for listening to Screen Tones, a webcomic podcast. Want to know some other ways to support us? Check out our Ko-fi at ko-fi.com/screentonescast, where your support will help us create more episodes, reach cool extra bonus goals, and keep us talking about anything and everything webcomics. You can also find us on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and our Discord server. Thank you so much for listening, sharing, rating, and supporting, and we'll see you next time.